There is a voice inside her head that no one ever hears. Not her friends. Not her family. Sometimes not even the man sleeping beside her. It speaks in moments of silence, in bathrooms, in mirrors, in the seconds before sleep. And if you could hear it, really hear it, you would realize how much of her life is lived in negotiation with herself. From the outside, she looks composed. Smiling. Capable. Maybe even confident. But inside, there is a constant conversation running in parallel. A question layered under every decision. Am I too much, or not enough? Should I say this, or stay quiet? If I speak honestly, will I be punished for it later? This dialogue begins early, long before she knows how to name it. Psychologists have observed that girls, more than boys, are conditioned to monitor themselves. Tone, posture, expression, emotion. Studies on social development show that by adolescence, many girls are already experts in emotional self-surveillance. They learn to read rooms before they read books. Safety becomes a skill. Approval becomes currency. And slowly, the inner voice stops asking what she wants, and starts asking what is acceptable. This voice is not dramatic. It is subtle. It sounds reasonable. It tells her to be understanding. To not overreact. To give one more chance. To shrink discomfort so others can remain comfortable. And each time she listens, a small piece of her honesty is postponed. Not erased. Just delayed. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from this. Not physical tiredness, but cognitive fatigue. The brain working overtime to balance authenticity and survival. Research on emotional labor shows that constantly managing one's internal state for external harmony leads to anxiety, depression, and identity confusion. Yet it is rarely named as suffering. Because she is still functioning. Still smiling. In relationships, this dialogue grows louder. When she feels hurt, another voice interrupts. Maybe I am being sensitive. Maybe it is my fault. Neuroscience explains why. The female brain, on average, shows higher activity in regions linked to empathy and social processing. This makes connection deep, but it also makes self-doubt louder when bonds feel threatened. Losing harmony feels like losing safety. History reinforces this pattern. For centuries, women were rewarded for silence and punished for expression. Even today, studies show that women who speak assertively are often perceived as aggressive, while men are seen as confident. The mind learns from patterns. Expression becomes risk. Silence becomes strategy. So the inner dialogue adapts. She rehearses conversations that never happen. She edits her thoughts before they reach her mouth. She wonders how she came across instead of how she actually felt. This is not weakness. It is intelligence shaped by environment. But intelligence used only for protection eventually forgets how to dream. At some point, usually alone, she feels a strange grief. Not for something lost, but for something never fully lived. A version of herself that might have existed if she did not have to be so careful. This realization does not arrive as anger. It arrives as sadness. A heavy, quiet sadness that has no obvious cause. Psychologists call this identity diffusion. When a person adapts so often that the core becomes blurred. Many women experience this in their 30s or 40s, when roles shift and the noise fades. They ask, who am I without being needed, pleasing, accommodating? The question is frightening because it has been postponed for decades. The world often misinterprets this moment. It calls it a crisis. Hormones. Dissatisfaction. In truth, it is awakening. The inner dialogue changes tone. It becomes less apologetic. More honest. She starts noticing how often she ignored her intuition. How often her body knew before her mind admitted it. This is the mental turning point. When self-betrayal becomes louder than fear. When staying silent hurts more than speaking, the brain resists at first, because change threatens belonging. But something deeper insists. The cost of suppression has finally outweighed the cost of truth. Neuroscience shows that suppressing emotion does not erase it. It redirects it inward. Into the body. Into chronic stress. Autoimmune conditions, anxiety disorders, sleep disturbances. The body keeps score of what the voice was not allowed to say. And eventually, it demands attention. When she begins to listen to herself, truly listen, the world does not collapse. Some relationships shift. Some people resist. But something unexpected happens. The inner dialogue softens. Not because life becomes easy, but because it becomes aligned. There is relief in not arguing with yourself all the time. This is not about becoming loud or hardened. It is about becoming whole. Integrating softness with boundaries. Empathy with self-respect. Care for others without abandonment of self. Psychology shows that authenticity strengthens connection. The relationships that survive truth are the ones that were real to begin with. Still, many women never reach this point. Not because they are incapable, but because the world rarely gives permission. That is why the inner dialogue remains hidden. Because if it were spoken aloud, it would expose how much emotional labor goes unseen. How much strength is mistaken for compliance. If you are listening to this and it feels uncomfortably familiar, there is a reason. Your mind is recognizing itself. The voice inside you is not broken. It is tired of being filtered. And awareness is the first act of compassion. You do not need to announce this change. You do not need to explain yourself to anyone. The most profound shifts happen quietly. In choices made without apology. In boundaries held without guilt. In listening to that inner voice not as an enemy, but as a guide that waited patiently for you to hear it. Because the inner dialogue women never share is not a weakness. It is a record. Of survival. Of intelligence. Of resilience. And when it finally becomes honest, not just inside but in life, it does not destroy who she is. It reveals who she always was.